Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking to Stowe Shoemaker. Stowe, it's great to connect with you. I'm looking forward to talking with you about your book, Hospitable Healthcare. You've got a really cool background, which we will get into. I like to start every episode off, Stowe. As a business coach, I work with people around the globe who are successful but stuck in business. And I get them unstuck. And so I like to start off by asking my guests, where's a recent place that you were stuck, and how did you get unstuck?
That's a great question. I think when I probably was stuck in the sense when I had been publishing a lot in hospitality and was doing a lot in really all facets of the hospitality industry, whether it be in the airlines, working with British Airways, with Hyatt and Accor, working in their loyalty programs at Hilton. And I kind of felt like, wow, I've just kind of done everything in the hospitality industry, but yet having been older and been in the industry for so long, I really felt like I had a lot that still could be done. And the question really was, well, what can be new? And so I began to think about what are some of the key characteristics of the knowledge that I know, and what are those things that could be transferable to other industries. Yeah. And I often thought about like Porter's 5 Forces model, who's not in the industry but could be. What are some of those value chain activities? So then I started thinking, well, really, healthcare. There's a lot of parallels. So I really started to investigate healthcare. So I think, in summary, the idea is to sort of think about what their skill set is. How is that transferable maybe to other industries? And then how can you move forward with using that current knowledge?
I love it. And I think we're in a world today where people are trying to figure out, what skills are transferable into different businesses, especially people who have been in the same business for the last 20, 30 years. They're looking to reinvent themselves. Things have evolved to a point where, I think if people take a moment, think community, and pause for a moment and really write down things that they're good at, they'll be able to see how transferable a lot of those are. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Yes. Thanks, Stowe.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So let's talk about there's a lot that I want to talk to you about, but you wrote this book, Hospitable Healthcare.
Yes.
The healthcare industry, that many people have many different opinions on it. But what I always appreciate when I am in a hospital or at a doctor is the bedside manner. It's Correct. The bedside manner. And what makes or breaks any experience is the experience of a bad experience, someone being cold, aloof, unconnectable, and things of that nature. And I think doctors are amazing. I find nurses sometimes really are really amazing. They're ones that are seem to be so much more connectable to the patient. So what did you find in your book, and what are you doing to just elevate the experience for the patient?
A great question. And my co-author is a gentleman named Peter Yesevich. And so what becomes important for the listener to understand is that I didn't just kind of decide, I want to do something in healthcare. And my co-author the same. We both came from hospitality backgrounds, but both have had experience in healthcare. I had a joint appointment at MD Anderson, University of Texas, MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston when I lived in Houston. And my co-author spent 10 years working with Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And so when we started looking at bringing hospitality principles into healthcare, that what things could be transferable, as I talked about earlier, we really didn't want to be just two guys with an opinion, right? Everybody has an opinion about everything. So what we actually did is we said, well, let's go out and do some interviews. So we essentially interviewed about 25 executives, either in healthcare or in hospitality, folks like Horst Schulze from Ritz-Carlton, folks from Mayo Clinic, also from the Cleveland Clinic, Geisner Hospitals. So really, systems that were really getting it. But then we also surveyed 1,200 U.S. adults across the United States, all balanced geographically, ethnicity-wise. for people who had visited a hospital, gone to a walk-in clinic, visited a physician's office, stayed in a hotel, or eaten in a restaurant. And we really looked at kind of 24 common touch points to see if, in fact, does hospitality score better than healthcare? And of course, in many situations, we found that to be the case.
Yeah. You talk about interviewing 25 executives, 1,200 US adults. I want to do a little mini business course, because I think a mini business course on interviewing people to get feedback is so important. I think sometimes, and I think there's a time and a place for, hiring major consulting firms and finding studies and things of that nature. But sometimes it's good to just pick up the phone and call some people, right?
Exactly.
The story goes that Sam Walton would leave the boardroom where they would give him the numbers. He'd go have pie and coffee with his customers and then come back to the boardroom to determine what made sense. And so the power of an interview and the power of talking and picking up the phone and talking to somebody who's been through an experience to evolve, I think, is priceless. So I want to do a mini business course on the 3 biggest takeaways you got from picking up the phone and calling 25 execs and 1,200 US adults. If you had to narrow it down to 3 things, what would be one of the 3 takeaways from doing that?
Well, the real 3 takeaways were, one is that one of the issues that really differentiated hospitality from healthcare was knowing the cost of the services provided. And we asked things like, the invoice bill I receive is easy to understand. I know how much I have to pay for the service before I receive it. The invoice bill I receive is consistent with my expectations. In hospitality, we understand that perfectly.
Yeah.
In healthcare, we have no idea. That was a huge, what we call a hospitality deficit. The second thing we really noticed was this issue of customer appreciation. In hospitality, we get thanked all the time for our business. In healthcare, not much at all. Our data shows that basically when people leave the hospital or the doctor's office, it's, here's your invoice, when's your next appointment? Never thanking them. And then the third thing was really interesting was the reception. The arrival experience. Is it welcoming? Is the environment welcoming? Do the people I interact with make me feel welcome? And what we found in the hospitals that did it well, they kind of focused on reception. They focused on customer appreciation. Those that didn't, this was a huge deficit.
Yeah.
And so those are the 3 big takeaways.
I want to comment on that because, there's many studies that talk about that you're judged by the first 7 seconds when you walk into a room. And I've walked into so many doctors' offices or so many fill in the blank, where the people at the front desk are so cold and do not welcome you kindly. And it really sets everything off in a negative way, especially in a doctor's environment where everything is so stressful. And to me, I think it's so important. There was a movie with William Hurt many, many, many years ago called The Doctor, and he doesn't realize the experience until he actually becomes a patient. And I think that so many, not just the medical field, but so many people have to really, I think, agree with you. Focus on number 3. How you welcome people into your world is so important. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let me ask you a question, Stowe. When it comes to when it comes to kind of like the one thing, when it comes to the one thing that's the most important when it comes to welcoming people, what did you find?
I think the biggest one is to prepare for the visit. So in all our research, we came up with what we call the PAER model, PAEER, which is to prepare, anticipate, engage, evaluate, and reward. And so really it's all about the preparation. So when the guest walks in or the customer walks in or the patient walks in, we expect them. We don't just sort of say record ID number, insurance card. It's more like, Dr. Shoemaker, welcome. We've been expecting you. Yeah. It's that sort of removing the angst is really critical. So we prepare. And I think what we found is that things that drive people crazy in healthcare is probably before they arrive, they fill out a whole form. When they arrive, they fill out the same form, usually handed to them on a clipboard. The photocopy's about 30 copies, been used many times, so it's all faded. And we act like we've never seen the person before.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens, if you have someone who's coming all the time for a regular checkup, right? They have to wait in line just like everybody else, like the first time visitor, rather than having separate lines for those that are just coming in for their normal procedures.
Yeah, really.
So preparation is the key.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot about that. I think, especially in the world we're in today, it's more important to prepare for everything. Everything, I think, can be reverse engineered to spend more time preparing. I love all of that. So I'm curious about you, and just kind of, success is never a straight line, and you've got a really cool background. You've got really cool experiences working for major Ivy League universities, and give us kind of the 1 to 2 minute story on you and some of the lessons you've learned along the way, and kind of maybe pepper in how you landed in this world.
So really, I think it's a sense of just incredible curiosity, and not wanting to sort of follow the traditional path, but just sort of following what I thought would be interesting at the time, even though people said maybe it's not that interesting. A good example is when I wrote a paper years ago on what was called, back propagation and neural networks, and I tried to get it published, and I published it tried to get it in the wrong journal, Hospitality Journal, and they said, well, what do we need to know about neural networks and back propagation? That we have statistical programs to do all this, and of course that's now the fundamentals of artificial intelligence. And then when I wrote my first paper on healthcare, again, I submitted to the wrong journal, and they said, well, we're hospitality. What does healthcare have to do with it? And I never listened to what people said. If I got rejection, I said, well, they're just not ready for it. And so I kept doing the things that I thought was interesting, and I looked for patterns. And luckily, when I did stuff for pricing and loyalty, I was kind of one of the first people to really look at it differently. People said it's crazy. Now I give talks and I'm almost embarrassed because the paper is so old, but it's kind of taken on. So I think the key thing for me is just really curiosity and following what I think is right and not listening to the naysayers.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm wrong, the naysayers are right, but at least I knew I did my best.
Right. And I love what you're talking about, because it's walking your path, right? It's walking your path in alignment with you. Right. So I want to do a mini kind of life course on that. Right. So you've kind of walked a path of being in alignment with what sounds like your soul, in alignment with your voice. And so for those who are, as you said, you kind of followed what you wanted to do. You were curious and you avoided the naysayers. Easy to say, difficult for many to do. If you had to break that down into kind of, 3 pieces of guidance to mentor someone how to tap into themselves, what would those 3 things be?
One would be to always remember that life is long and you are going to fail. And I certainly failed at different things, but I didn't let the failure define me. Rather, I learned from the failure. The second thing that I would recommend is that you do listen to the naysayers, because sometimes they do have good things to say.
Yeah.
And you can want to twist that. So don't automatically put your blinders on where you think you're right all the time. And I think the third thing is to really just enjoy the journey, right? And do it for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. Like, I never followed the path because, I'm going to do this because it'll make a lot of money. I followed the things that I was interested in, and suddenly people found it interesting and they were willing to pay and buy my book and things like that. I didn't set out to say, I'm going to write this book so I can become a bestseller. It was more like, I'm going to write this book because I think it has something to say. And hopefully people will agree with it. So I think those are the things I would focus on.
No, I appreciate that. And let me ask you a question. One of the things I find is, I've always kind of evolved what I've done in business in what makes me feel fulfilled. And when I'm fulfilled and in alignment, I can't explain it so, but things just kind of will flow through me, right? When I'm in alignment, when I'm coaching people, I'm a business coach, and things just kind of flow through me and I don't necessarily always know where it comes from, but I'm able to give it to people that I'm coaching, and it helps them get unstuck. So when you're in your space, are you able to allow things to flow through you? And do you kind of tap into a universal energy that allows you to kind of keep going?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I've been a professor, for the last 20 plus years. And what I love about being a professor is the mentorship and the guidance of students. Yeah. And it's really not about getting your ideas to the student. It's having the student figure out what they want to do and act as a mentor to them to help them guide them on their path. Yeah. Right? I've never wanted the student to follow my path. I give them suggestions about what's worked for me, what hasn't worked for me, but I am not their guide. I'm just a person to help them find their own path.
I love it.
And it does. It just, if you remove yourself from it, like one of my mentors once said to me, she was a theater coach, and she always said, Stowe, you just have to be true to the work.
Yeah.
And she goes, I tell my actors all the time, be true to the work. And at first I had no idea what she was talking about.
Yeah.
But then I realized by being true to the work, it's not about you. It's about what you're conveying to the audience, to your student.
Yeah.
And when you remove your own personal things from it, then you're open to letting the message that you want to help the person you're trying to help work its way through.
Yeah. Right. And creating the space for that to happen.
Exactly.
And not, correct. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. Where does this inner wisdom of yours come from? Can you rewind and look and point to a mentor of your own? Were you born with it? Where did this come from?
Well, I always had, as I mentioned earlier, a curiosity, but I've had some incredible mentors in my life. My first really was, a gentleman and his wife, Frank and Jane Emanuel, who, when I was first in college, working for them in the hotel business, working for them in Vermont. And I realized from them that everything we do is about creating great experiences, not only for our guests, but for our employees. Like, I was very impatient when I was younger, and I was like, why can't they do this? And this person's an idiot. We should get rid of them. And they were always like, they always kept reminding everybody has their strengths. You just have to learn to see it.
Yeah.
Right. And then my mentor, when I did my graduate degree, a gentleman named Bob Lewis, really taught me how to think critically.
Yeah.
Right. My third mentor, a gentleman named Leo Renahan from Cornell, Mark Renahan, really taught me. He told me all the mistakes that he made and how I should avoid them.
Yeah.
Which was incredible. And then my mentor, Allison Van Dyke, who was at the head of the theater at Cornell University. I mean, she just taught me about life and about emotions and being true to the work. Unfortunately, all those mentors I just mentioned have passed away. And I just hope they're proud of me, because I've tried to carry every lesson I've learned from them to others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they may have passed away, but I'm grateful for their guidance to you, because I just learned a lot. I'll carry that. This podcast will carry that. And so there's great things that come from it. So that's great advice. Let's do a quick speed round. So yes. What's a book that's had the biggest impact on you?
Well, that's a hard question, because I read all the time, but I think I've read a lot of sort of self-help books, and I think I'm kind of drawing a blank. So let me come back to you.
Come back to that one. Yeah.
Come back to that one.
All right, come back to that. Think about that. In the meantime, what's the best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
The best piece of wisdom I ever received, actually, came from Harry Potter. And it's when Professor Dumbledore is talking to Harry, and I use this all the time, where he says something like, "It is our choices, Harry, far more than our abilities that define who we truly are. And I just love that piece of advice, is that what are the choices we make? It's not our abilities, but how do we use those abilities to help others, I think, is what I take out of that.
I love this. And finish this sentence. One thing that everybody can do to tap into their own I'm going to change the question. Finish the sentence. What is one thing every company can do to be more hospitable?
It's to treat their employees with respect and the way they would want to be treated themselves. The golden rule, really.
Yeah, I love it. Tell everybody, Stowe, where they can connect with you, learn more about you, buy your book.
So the best way to connect, we have a website called www.hospitablehealthcare.com. And on that, we talk about the book. We have short interviews with the different people that we interviewed for the book. We talk about the payer model. The book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. There's also a Kindle version, and it's just called Hospitable Healthcare, just what the patient ordered.
I appreciate it. So this was great. I really enjoyed this talk. I want to keep in touch with you too, because you're full of great wisdom. I think it's so important to. I loved the name of your book. I love what you're teaching others. We need more of the hospitality world in so many businesses. I have a good friend, Simon Thomas, who started a company, Dobie Real Estate. We are Dobie.com. They're a residential real estate, and he grew up in the hospitality business, and so he's incorporated kind of this hospitality into his residential real estate company, and you really can see and feel the difference in it. And you're doing that in the healthcare field, which I think is so important and so needed. I just want to extract a couple things that you said, which is, going back to interviewing the obvious people to get intel that can really help you grow your business. Be curious, walk your own path, pay extra attention to how you welcome people into your business, into your world, and just look at things differently. Pay attention to the naysayers, but don't let them get you off your path. Really, I mean, and I appreciate it. This was great, and I appreciate all your time. Any last thoughts, Stowe?
Just two things. One, the book that I think that influenced me a lot was The Once and Future King by T.H. White.
Okay.
I just love that book, and the whole message about Merlin and everything all about that was wonderful. And again, just to kind of promote the book, the payer model, prepare, anticipate, engage, evaluate, reward. You can use those principles in any field beside hospitality, beside healthcare. And if people are interested in some of the articles I've written, they can just write to me at stowe.shoemaker@unlv.edu, and I can send them some of the papers I've written on bringing hospitable principles everywhere.
Good. And I'd like to read those as well, Stowe. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. The community, thank you. You can reach me at jondwoskin.com. Stowe, stay on the line. We'll catch up a little bit more.
Okay. Thank you.